In the early 2000s, a group of geneticists were digging through DNA samples from men across Asia when they noticed something strange. Thousands of men, spread across different countries, shared an almost identical Y chromosome. That's the chunk of DNA passed down from father to son. The paper suggested that all of these men might have descended from one common ancestor who lived around 1,000 years ago. One man, one Y chromosome, passed down through generations of sons across centuries. If their calculations were right, that would mean that 16 million living men today have this lineage. And their best guess as to who this ancestral baby daddy was? I mean, Genghis Khan, right? Now, when this paper hit headlines, people went gaga thinking they could be related to such a cool guy. Because it feels plausible, right? We've all heard the stories. Genghis Khan is reported to have had hundreds, if not thousands, of wives and concubines, but he also wiped out countless other bloodlines with all of his murdering. So his genetic legacy was even more powerful because it was, well, the only one left. It turns out that it's probably not the case that 1 in 200 Asian men are related to Genghis Khan, but the question still stands. Could one man, like Khan, with his status, wealth, and big old harem, dominate bloodlines for generations to come? Then there's King Solomon, known for his crowd-pleasing story about 2 women claiming to be the mother of a baby. So he's like, just cut the baby in half. And the real mother proves her love by not wanting that to happen. Classic. It's said that Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines. The Bible doesn't explicitly say how many children he had, but we can assume it was a few. Or how about the second ruler of Morocco's Alawite dynasty, Ismail Ibn Sharif? Known as Moulay Ismail, he's reported to have had over 500 concubines and wives in his tightly regulated harem. It's said that any man even caught looking at a member of the harem could be executed. The Sultan was reportedly so obsessed with maintaining sexual fidelity that he had lovers and servants rigorously surveilled. By one account from 1704, he was believed to have had over 600 living children at the time. But modern historians estimate the number could have been even higher, like over 1,000, if you include unrecorded births. In practice, this meant that Ismail would have needed to have had sex at least once a day for 32 years. Given that he had hundreds of wives and concubines, this was logistically plausible, but like a lot of work. It paid off though, because his descendants would continue to rule Morocco, forming a direct line to the current royal family. In the past, a powerful ruling man having loads of kids was insurance for the monarchy. It was a necessity. Having children meant securing heirs to the throne and cementing dynasties. And you could marry off the girls for political gain. Also, a lot of your kids were probably going to die before they got to adulthood, so you had to insure for that. Additionally, rulers had harems, concubines, or multiple wives, not just for fun, but because it was a symbol of wealth and dominance. In many cultures, a man's virility is tied to his power. Fathering many children is a sign to others that you're a strong-jawed giga-chad, a masculine figure, and the gods approve your message. It's all about the public brand. And in the end, when you're poisoned by your enemies or you die of tuberculosis, it's your massive child army that will live on in your name. In a world of monarchies, the more children, or specifically sons, that you had, the better your odds at holding on to power. Because you didn't earn your birthright, you inherited it, like a nepo baby. But when monarchies started going out of fashion between the 16 and 1800s, rulers having harems and loads of children became less common too. Democracy changed the game of power. Sort of. That's why even billionaires today don't need 20 kids to secure their place in history, though a few do still try. Even countries in the UK, Sweden, and Japan who still have royal families usually only have 2 to 3 kids like everybody else. Today, fertility technologies like IVF, global sperm clinics, and private sperm donation has completely changed how many children one man can have in his lifetime. And due to infertility, birth rate decline, and more women choosing to have children alone or in same-sex partnerships, as gross as it is to say, there is an indisputable demand for sperm. So let me introduce the super sperm donors, the men with a life's mission to fill up the world's sperm banks and hand deliver cups, vials, and Ziploc bags of their baby batter to women and couples in need. This is Kyle Gordy. Kyle is a 33-year-old man from LA who's made several public appearances as a super sperm donor.
That's what I am. Kyle Gordy, the sperm donor.
The true number of children Gordy has fathered through sperm donation is hard to verify, but some publications report close to 100 children as of 2025. He was also cast on the reality TV show 90 Day Fiancé Love in Paradise.
My name is Kyle. I'm 32. I'm originally from Los Angeles, California, but I spend most of my time traveling the world. My favorite things to do when I travel are shopping for souvenirs, buying the local cuisine, and getting women pregnant.
Kyle Gordy markets himself as a fertility doctor.
And your ambition is you want to be the #1
fertility doctor.
Yeah, but you don't have one day of training as fertility doctor.
I don't have the education and training on it, but I have the experience of doing it. For
over a decade now, he's been running a website called bepregnantnow.com, where he publishes all sorts of fun stuff about male and female fertility, as well as tips on how to get pregnant. His website has had many revisions over the years, but considering everything stinks of AI now, I'd like to go back a little bit into the past. So let's say you want to learn about soft cups. Gordy writes, soft cups are a product that were originally used for periods, but they also work great for trying to conceiving. It is very simple as to what they do. They simply keep the sperm from falling out. Sure. Well, what about edging? On his website, Gordy reveals that he edges 2 hours before every planned sperm donation, which is quite the commitment. Wow, this is great male fertility information. Gordy says that he created this site because he understands how difficult it is to get pregnant and how hard it is to find accurate advice, because most information is from doctors and medical professionals who do not have personal experience in getting someone pregnant. Because as we all know, doctors and medical professionals give up their right to have children when they enter the medical field. It's like an ethics thing. Therefore, much of their advice will be inaccurate. Under the heading Getting Pregnant Recommendations, Gordy lays out everything a couple must do on the day of and hours leading up to getting pregnant, including eating lettuce with beans if you're a woman, while men should eat a chocolate bar 2 hours after dinner. Sorry, cacao. Also, edging. There's no research cited on this website other than dead links to a website called healthfitnessnutrition.org and Global Search Now, which I think is kind of weird because fertility is a fairly robust area of research, not to mention the thousands of books and media on the subject made by doctors and reputable figures. There's a lot on Gordy's website about the things that he does to ensure his fertility, but not a lot of marketing himself as a good donor. Like, there's no medical or genetic information, no evidence of STD checks or IQ, not even a paragraph on his personality, hobbies, or childhood interests. There's hardly any photos of him and no information about his genetic heritage, height, eye color, or appearance. Like, these are the things that women might want to know when choosing a donor, right? His primary focus seems to be presenting himself as an expert on fertility and a professional donor.
So it's not good to sit down because it's like heats up your balls. So it's not good for your sperm.
But aside from the lack of relevant personal information and peer-reviewed articles, there's also just this part of me, maybe it's that evolutionary power of sexual selection that women have, that tells me that something here is just off. Kyle Gordy says he primarily uses Facebook groups to advertise his services.
This is my profile I made. Profile picture was when I did modeling. Oh, you can't show my friends. They're almost all girls. Because I have 2,500 people, and most of them are girls looking to get pregnant.
In the world of private sperm donation, Facebook is where it's at. There's thousands of groups worldwide, sometimes set up and run by the donors themselves. Then there's websites called connection sites and apps like Just a Baby.
Looking for a partner, co-parent, or someone willing to help you have a baby? Just a Baby is a world-first app connecting people who want to have or help others have a baby.
That help link sperm donors with sperm seekers without going through the regulated channels of fertility clinics and sperm banks.
Okay, so that's, dare I ask? Yeah, it's just a syringe.
For drawing up the
Yeah, aspirate the sperm. Yeah, the semen.
So you deposit in something, do you?
A cup, yes, or you can use a Ziploc bag if you don't have a cup. Hey there, how you doing?
Good, thank you.
Good luck, guys.
Thank you, have a good night.
And that's it.
And before you ask, why would anyone risk the safety of their future child by finding a donor on Facebook? We'll get there. Typically, fertility clinics and sperm banks subject their donors to a host of tests and procedures with the intention of reducing harm to donors, mothers, and babies. Donors have limits on how many children they can have, how old they can be when donating, they have to have their medical and genetic history cleared, and a bunch of other stuff. I mean, we're talking about the welfare of children here, right? Mistakes and dodgy stuff, of course, goes on, but generally there's more oversight and protections for those involved when compared to meeting a stranger on Facebook and inviting them over to jerk it in your bathroom. The main downsides to using a clinic are the cost, with a single dose costing in the thousands of dollars with no guarantee that you'll get pregnant on the first go. Also, the child doesn't get to know who their father is until they're 18 years old, or in some places, donors can still be 100% anonymous, versus private donors who sometimes offer to be known with some communication if the families want it that way. And women also report that the process just seems kind of sterile. Evolutionary instincts that women use to choose a partner to have children with, that's taken out of the process almost entirely. All you get is a short bio about the donor's education, hobbies, and basic medical history, or if you're lucky, a quick recording of their voice. It's not like you get to meet these men, have a conversation, look them in the eye, and suss them out yourself. Journalist Valerie Bauman likens shopping for a sperm donor at a bank to shopping on Amazon, minus the customer reviews. So despite the obvious red flags of going private, it's understandable that women who care about their reproductive choices are looking elsewhere, particularly in places like America where the fertility industry is not well regulated anyway. But it still feels pretty sketchy. On the sperm donor side, many men cite women's complaints about sperm banks and clinics as part of their motivation to donate privately.
You know, they get to see me, what I'm like, so they get to know what they're getting into instead of just a number on a vial.
Some also feel that the current system doesn't give men enough autonomy. In terms of motivation, they also say things like, "I just love helping people to have children." And these altruistic reasons are mirrored in the studies. When researchers ask respondents on their motivations for donating sperm, "I want to help others" was rated as very important. But what I can't seem to understand is, if your reasoning was highly altruistic, why would some men choose to only donate privately and not through a sperm bank? I can't help but wonder if these men see the high standards of sperm banks and are just genuinely scared of being rejected. Are they afraid of needles and psychological tests? Potentially. By some reports, less than 5% of male applicants are accepted by sperm banks. That's like 4 out of 100 men. So I'd guess that many of these private-only donors either know already or don't want to know that their sperm ain't good enough for the bank. This is why I don't think it's all about helping people. Because if it was, I'd imagine you'd be prepared to go through the more demanding process of a sperm bank if it meant safer outcomes for all involved. Plus, it can pay pretty well. Clearly, there's something else going on here.
I wonder if anyone else has the burning question, which is, why do you do this?
We get some clarity, though, from the sperm donors only subreddit. Men say that they're motivated to donate sperm because having children gives them a feeling of existential purpose, or they want a genetic legacy. Those who sell their sperm say they're motivated by money, and too often, many say that they do it because they have something called a breeding fetish. I was not prepared for the amount of posts about the sexual gratification that some sperm donors get out of impregnating women, particularly lesbians and married women. Assumably because of the ego boost these men get when a woman who is unattainable chooses to have sex with them. They don't seem to care that these women aren't attracted to them or don't want to know them as people. It looks more like they want that feeling of being chosen. And I just want to take a beat to point out how gross the language is in this community. They talk about breeding women like you would cattle. It feels very dehumanizing. There's this sort of pseudo-medicalized language that they use, I guess, to distance themselves from the females who are ultimately having their babies. I also found a lot of discussion from donors who insist that they only offer sperm through natural insemination, NI, which is just sex. Now, some donors proclaim that NI has better odds, but there's no evidence that it does. The ads for some of these natural-only guys are pretty funny though. This guy says, "Hello, I'm a 27-year-old peak athletic male. I'm 184 centimeters tall, 6 foot, blonde and handsome, fluent in several languages. This is a kink for me. Looking for couples or women 30 plus who want to have fun and diversify their genetic offspring. Located in Greece for the summer." I mean, how could the ladies resist? And yeah, the desire to have children is hardwired. I get why people might be into this. I'm not here to judge people's kinks. But notice how I want to help people isn't really part of the discussion in these online communities. Instead, there's a lot of back and forth male locker room high fives from men bragging about having NI with married and queer women as though it's some kind of trophy. And that's because it is for them. Convincing a woman to have sex with them is an achievement, just like impregnating her with your super sperm is seen as a win for his ego. The counter argument here is that it's a transactional agreement between two adults. These men want sex or whatever their motivations might be. The women want a baby and they're willing to do what's needed to make that happen. So everybody wins, right? But I think it's murky territory if donors aren't being fully transparent about their motivations, among other things. Often these women are desperate, running out of time, or don't have the income to go through a clinic. There's probably a lot of women who assume that these donors are healthy and honest, but without those checks and balances, how can you be sure?
What made you decide on Joe?
It honestly was an opportunity that we couldn't not take.
What boxes did he absolutely have to tick for you?
That he was healthy, that he had all of his medical checks, as in I wouldn't be put into danger.
And how did you check on that?
We've honestly thought that being so open and public, that he would have to be.
You could be infected right now and not know it. Isn't that correct?
No, you could be infected and not know it.
I'm talking about you, Joe. I'm not donating. You are. And of those women you've seen, how many of those have involved natural insemination?
I don't know. There maybe half.
So, Joe, you understand that you can acquire a disease and not know it when you have unprotected sex.
The theoretical risk that someone could have a disease which has symptoms which no one can see or feel any result of, it all sounds very theoretical to me. You know, people want to get pregnant, and the people who want to get pregnant, and the people who want to be safe can be safe.
I'm 23 years old. I'm a single mother of 2 children. I met Kyle online while I was looking in a sperm donation group. We got to know each other and he was asking, was I married, single, or my sexual orientation? We talked about the different methods of insemination and he suggested natural insemination and I kind of agreed because it has the most higher success rate.
I really leave it up to the woman, how she feels comfortable, how she want to do it.
It was Kyle's idea to do natural, considering that he's coming out all these ways anyway.
Once in a blue moon, I do natural insemination. Usually it's because the women feel like it'll be more effective because there's less exposure to air and less variables. They feel like it's just going to be more effective and stuff.
Using a cervical cup or having sexual intercourse, if you timed it well, it's going to give you the same odds. Some would say cervical cup will give you better odds because you're putting it close to the cervix, but that's never been proven. But I would say at least the same odds.
Motivationally, some might say they want a genetic legacy, but what they really mean is that they have the biological desire to procreate, but lack the desire to stick around and raise a family of their own. They want the personal gratification of having children without having to deal with the realities of it. And that's interesting.
I guess what I get out of it, I get a kid out of it. I could obviously say, well, I'm altruistic, I'm doing this, but in reality, I am kind of getting a kid out of it. Even when you go to a sperm bank, you're getting to have a kid for free, essentially, assuming they don't go to child support. It is free, so I am technically getting a kid out of it.
After researching these guys online, which of course is a small portion of all donors, I do think that they're the types of men who heterosexual women would not typically choose to partner with. They often seem pretty selfish, kind of unreliable, immature, and ignorant. All traits that are undesirable when selecting someone to have children with. So in a way, these men are circumventing natural selection, getting the opportunity to pass on their genes without having to be an attractive partner. Just offer your sperm to a lesbian couple and never have to confront yourself.
You are risking women's lives by your very deliberate actions.
No, I'm not. I'm helping women achieve their dreams.
You are not helping anyone.
No
you
one-
liken
no one
yourself
has
to
become
some
sick.
doctor on call waiting to assist some poor woman. But in fact, it's quite disturbing what you're really about.
The real risk is that a woman will die a spinster without a child. The real risk is you're going to go right off the edge of the evolutionary cliff because you're hypnotized by propaganda.
The real risk is that you're totally deluded.
Richard Dawkins popularized the concept of the selfish gene, the idea that the animal is a survival machine for its genes. Quote, "The animal is a robot that has a brain, eyes, hands, and so on, but it also carries around its own blueprint, its own instructions. This is important because if the animal gets eaten, if it dies, then the blueprint dies as well. The only genes that get through the generations are the ones that have managed to make their robots avoid getting eaten and succeeded in living long enough to reproduce. In a world where women have more reproductive choice than they've ever had, where queer couples can get married and live openly in many places, where most marriages aren't arranged and women aren't delegated to the home, it makes sense that we would see a rise in quote-unquote undesirable men taking their reproductive goals to the extreme to continue their genes. On an evolutionary level, these men are motivated more than others to ensure their genetics survive. And they're just ignorant and narcissistic enough to validate their choices and disregard criticisms. It's like the perfect Venn diagram of evolutionary drive, narcissism and ignorance, and ideology or morality. In the end, the super donor is a man who believes he must reproduce, should reproduce, and is uniquely valuable in doing so.
I have everything taken care of right now, and so, helping all these people out. I got it covered. I'm like Superman.
Occasionally, you'll hear an argument saying that these men are addicted to having babies. Addiction is a complex phenomenon, so I'm reluctant to make assumptions about that. But I do think we can see how the pleasure gained from getting a woman pregnant might have some addicting qualities, especially if you're a donor without a family of your own, or all your friends are also sperm donors.
I'd like to get the world record ever, make sure no one's going to break it, get as many as possible. I reckon I've got about 800 or so far.
I think the fact that you've got such a high sperm count probably helps towards it too.
It's like 420 million.
There's probably an element of belonging to the group and competition among other donors that mimics a kind of gambler's mindset. I actually think it's a bit sad, really, because a man having loads of kids that he doesn't provide for is a pretty big red flag for most women. Like Gordy said something about why he started donating in the first place.
I pretty much started because I didn't think I was ever going to get in a relationship and have kids myself. So I figured if I can go and, obviously help someone have a kid. And then, obviously I guess it's a kind of a sense that it allows me to have a kid as well. I'm one of those people that I'm just not a relationship type of person. It's just what it is. But also, if you look at most people that end up together and have kids end up divorced or they break up anyways. Like my parents got together and they were only together a few years and have kids, but now they broke up and then they have a strained relationship. But with me, it's like we were never together. So us having a kid and whatever, there's no drama in a sense, like, we didn't break up. We don't hate each other. You know what I mean? So it's a very civil thing.
How old were you when you did your first donation?
I think I was 22.
I mean, he was pretty young. Like, potentially things could have changed for him within a couple of years. But committing to this behavior and lifestyle, especially the reality TV stuff, is probably going to make finding a stable partner much harder for him. And it didn't have to be that way necessarily. I just think it's a bit sad that these guys start out with the idea that they're never going to have a relationship and a loving family of their own. And then by doing this for years, basically secure that as their future. Now, not all donors are this way, of course. There's probably some good ones out there, probably many who don't feel the need to be in the spotlight all the time. Maybe some watching this video right now. In one small study, there was a decent portion of private donors who were older married men who have already had families of their own, who value the role of the parent and the father, and who don't see donating sperm as just genetics, as in they're willing to have contact with the children and play some kind of familial role. There's also men like Drew Sollenberger, who was labeled as an extreme altruist.
Many people do distrust sperm donors. There are some who do this for the wrong reasons, but there are many good donors.
Drew is an extreme altruist who donates thousands of dollars to charity and even donated one of his kidneys to a child.
Then there's Ari. He's like the Seinfeld of sperm donors. I honestly thought this guy was doing a bit when I first saw him, but no, this seems to be who he is.
You know, you were telling me this 10 years ago, right? Or 5 years ago, you told me to stop. But then I would have been a stat on all these cuties, right? You're trying to tell me they don't bring me joy because I already have 20 others?
Ari has that same stupid grin on his face that those dads from Britain's Biggest Families have when they're asked about their kids.
We did say we wouldn't have any more, and we were quite adamant that we weren't going to, but I think we weren't quite ready to quit, were we? We just wanted another one.
Like, they just fucking love making kids. It's amazing. But Ari is also one of the public sperm donors who's caught up in the child support discussion. So let's talk briefly about some of the legal cases and laws surrounding parental rights and responsibilities. When you donate to a sperm bank, you'll be asked to provide a detailed medical and family history, tests for STIs, genetic conditions, and drug use. They'll evaluate your semen quality, including how many swimmers you've got and how fast they can move. They also might put you through a psychological or behavioral screening. If you're one of the lucky ones who pass the test, then you'll sign contracts about how your sperm will be stored and used and limits on how many children you can have, which is to prevent accidental incest. You'll also sign papers that waive your parental rights, as in you will not be the legal father of any children that are born with your sperm. You won't have custody or visitation rights. You won't be financially responsible for the child. Basically, you won't be required to pay child support. If you choose to donate privately, however, even if you draw up a legal agreement that states that you won't have parental rights or duties, you can still be declared the legal father and ordered to pay child support. There's plenty of cases of this happening.
Right now, I'm about to go to family court. Mom refiled, try and get more money, so I'm trying to, explain that I'm already broke.
How much are you paying now in child support? Well, that's some number. But it's becoming
It's more than half my salary.
It's more than half your salary.
California is one of the few places that is friendly to private arrangements when done with clear legal contracts. But for right now, this is the exception. On the other side, sometimes it's the donors who try to get parental rights over the children, even when that wasn't part of the original agreement. On Reddit, a now deleted user posted "Off my chest, filing for custody," where he writes, "My daughter is 4 months already. I'm heavily involved, but I have never met her in person. They have only sent me photos and videos. I'm filing to take her custody tomorrow, 10 a.m. I'm her dad. I was never a donor and would never do it again. It's been 13 months of intense abuse from this couple, but the game is going to change tomorrow. If they didn't want their baby to have a dad, they should have done it through the right channels." Now, I'm not sure why you would post that in this specific subreddit if you were not a donor, but okay. In 2025, the case of Robert Charles Alban, also known as Joe Donor, was decided. Alban took a same-sex couple to court for parental rights over their daughter conceived by sperm donation. He lost the case. Shocker. With the judge saying that Alban was seeking to control the vulnerable women who contacted him for his services. Judge Poole said Alban uses litigation and applies for parental responsibility and contact as a way of securing his immigration status. The judge went on to say that not only does Alban gain sexual gratification from being a sperm donor, but, quote, he also has a more profound psychological need to be validated, recognized, and to assert himself over others, and he seizes opportunities to do this when it suits him. It's reported that Alban has over 180 children worldwide.
There's no such thing as too many little Joes?
No, I worked at the math, and in the United States, I would have like a limit of maybe 2,500, and I'm nowhere near that, so there's no problem.
You quite like the idea of 2,500 little Joes.
I mean, it's just, I mean, I'm averaging about 10 a year, so hopefully I live that long, but I don't think so. I'm just the tool by which this happens.
Joe Donor certainly is a tool.
And speaking of court cases, remember that Netflix docuseries from last year about Jonathan Jacob Meyer, the man with 1,000 kids? For recap, Meyer was flying all over the world donating sperm and lying about how many children he had. He allegedly was playing sperm roulette with his freaky friend where they would mix their sperm together to see whose genetics would win. And allegedly, he was part of a super sperm donors boys club that wants to bleach Africa. Honestly, if you haven't seen this series, go watch it. It's a wild ride. Anyway, a group of women who had children with Meyer took him to court, and in 2023, a Dutch court ordered him to cease all sperm donations. The court imposed a fine of 100,000 euros for any future violations and mandated that Meyer request the destruction of his stored semen in clinics worldwide. In 2025, he faced further legal action for attempting to contact his donor kids via YouTube, resulting in a court order to remove those videos or face additional fines. Now, you can go find him on YouTube, but I would not recommend it because his videos are incredibly boring. Also, it's my opinion that this guy does not deserve any more attention or ad revenue.
Jonathan, we have to make clear that you have been given a lifelong ban on sperm donation by a Dutch court, yes?
Yeah, but that's,
And that goes worldwide.
That's
the
true.
Dutch court has said that that should be a worldwide ban on you donating sperm. So there's clearly a real level of concern about your activities. Given that, and we appreciate that you don't share that view, do you now accept that this is something that you should desist from?
Listen to me. The Netflix documentary was recorded in the United States, right? In the United States, there's a cap of 25 donor children per 800,000 inhabitants. So in the United States, a sperm donor can have up to 10,000 children. That's legal there. That's totally normal. So whether a Dutch court says this or that, it's very cultural. It's super cultural. That's straight to the Netflix documentary or movie, I must say.
Jonathan, if you don't mind.
That they think that 550 is a lot. Don't you think that's...
There's also been cases involving sperm donors who pass on inheritable genetic conditions to their many offspring. James McDougall was publicly named for donating online and fathering 15 children despite knowing he had an incurable genetic disorder known as Fragile X syndrome. And just this year, sperm from a donor that was used to conceive at least 67 children throughout Europe has been linked to 10 cases of cancer developing in those kids. The worst part is that this was all done through a sperm bank. The vice president of communications at the European Sperm Bank says the donor has been thoroughly tested even above the required standards, but preventative genetic screening is reaching its limits here. Every human being has about 20,000 genes, and it's scientifically simply not possible to detect disease-causing mutations in a person's gene pool if you don't know what you're looking for. Basically, it's not our fault. Some of the worst court cases are about doctors who use their own sperm to inseminate women without their knowledge or consent. Dr. Jan Karbaat fathered at least 49 children fraudulently at his own fertility clinic in the Netherlands. Former doctor Cecil Jacobson, known as the baby maker, had up to 75 children under false pretenses and was convicted in 1992 on multiple accounts of fraud and perjury. And during the 1970s and 80s, Dr. Donald Cline fathered at least 94 children at his fertility clinic. The women thought that they were getting donations from anonymous medical residents working at the hospital across the road. But instead, Cline would just go into his office and whack one out. Or in a few cases, women brought their husband's sperm along for artificial insemination by Cline, but he did a bait and switch.
You know, it's like a bad dream that's recurring. You're going to wake up. Every time you wake up, it's not a dream.
I just can't believe how it was, done to us. I really can't. And for him to act like nothing happened, I think that's the worst part of it.
And no, he has never been convicted for this because fertility fraud has only just been written into law in the state of Indiana, thanks mostly to the advocacy work done by some of Cline's donor kids. Cases like these are becoming more prevalent because of at-home DNA kits like 23andMe and Ancestry DNA, which let people trace their genetic history. And it's promoting discussions about global regulation and oversight for the donor industry, including the need to impose international limits on how many children children donors can have worldwide, as well as a push for laws around fertility fraud in cases where there's a bait and switch or the donors lie about how many children they have or their medical or genetic history. But we still have a long way to go. All right, I think it's time we talk about incest. Incest is one of those complicated topics like cannibalism that I'd love to dive deeper into in another video. So let me know in the comments if you want to see that. But in terms of male breeders, I think the most important questions are, how likely is this to occur and why does it matter? I watched a podcast with Kyle Gordy and another sperm donor in Britain where they chatted briefly about incest. I was going to play a clip for you here, but it seems that the account has taken down the video where this donor named Daniel interviews Kyle Gordy. Luckily, I did take fairly extensive notes. So at around 47 minutes, the topic of incest comes up and Kyle says, to be honest, there's really no risk of incest. People have thousands of cousins, like second, third, fourth cousins. No one ever says anything. So I'm going to respond to Gordy's two claims. First, that there's no real risk of incest. And second, that relationships between second, third, and fourth cousins are perhaps as harmless as relations between half-siblings. In terms of risk, if you have, say, 100 kids and they all live in the same country or region, then the chances of two half-siblings attending the same school, using the same dating apps, or even marrying without knowing they're related goes way up. We see an example of this in the Jonathan Meyer story, where multiple families had children attending the same school. It turned out that he had at least 102 children via 11 sperm banks in the Netherlands, as well as an unknown amount of private donor kids, all living in proximity and born within a few years of each other. But the concerns about donor kids being at risk of incest goes further than just proximity, because of something called genetic sexual attraction, GSA, a phenomenon where close biological relatives who meet as adults without prior bonding feel unexpected romantic or sexual attraction. Like, imagine you're at your favorite place in the world, Disneyland, and you're dressed as your favorite character, Peter Pan. While waiting in line for a churro, you see this girl Disney bounding as Wendy. What the fuck? Your eyes meet. It's love at first sight. You share a quirky sense of humor, the same pointy nose, and late diagnosed attention deficit disorder. You don't even know that your dad had to have a ball removed after a severe case of testicular torsion when he was 13, and that your parents used a donor to conceive you. Being related to this girl isn't even on your mind. Until that fateful date night, 6 years down the line, when you check your 23andMe DNA results together. The test was supposed to be fun. And now it's a nightmare.
I went to high school with two of my genetic half-sisters, and one of them sat right in front of me, and I found her very sexually attractive.
Unintentional consanguinity, so hard to say, or accidental incest is a real thing that happens to people.
It just felt very surreal, and sure enough, within a couple of weeks, he sent me the screenshot that said, "You are my sister." And, the mind-boggling thing about it was just, as he sent me this screenshot, it also, you have the notification on your phone from 23andMe, you have a new half-sibling. And so just that realization, it's just felt like I was on the Truman Show.
I can imagine that many sperm donors negate these points about accidental incest because they say they spread their donations out across different countries. And yes, if you really did not have more than a few kids in one area, the odds of incest would drop significantly. But without an international registry of children born from your DNA, how are we to know the true level of risk? Assumably, donors have more kids in the areas that they live and work, right? And just 25 to 50 kids in one population can increase the risk of accidental half-sibling meet cutes significantly. If we're not tracking anything or imposing limits on how many kids you can father, at what point is a donor's right to anonymity and freedom negating the rights and health of the children that they help create? And if you still think that this is all theoretical, in 1975, researchers put the rate of children born of incest at 1 in a million. But recent studies show the number has reached 1 in 7,000 in the US. Yikes, that's too close for comfort. There's still a lot of debate around exactly how many children one man should be limited to globally to ensure we don't end up with an incest problem generations down the line. In 2015, a group of experts published their recommendations after debating the genetic, psychosocial, operational, and ethical points of view, and determined that while genetically it may be safe to have up to 200 offspring per donor worldwide, factoring in all the other considerations like the experience of the children, the consensus was that no man should exceed 100 families globally.
When we get a new sibling alert, you're praying, please don't let it be somebody I know, or please don't let it be somebody I dated.
Gordy's second point is about distant cousins versus half-siblings. So let's clear that up. Second, third, and fourth cousins share very little DNA, actually, about 0.2 to 3.1%. While there are many laws regarding incest, relationships between distant cousins are not considered incestuous by law or genetics. Half-siblings, on the other hand, share about 25% of their DNA. Sexual or romantic relationships between half-siblings are legally considered incest in most countries. And this is because they carry significantly higher risk of passing on recessive genetic disorders if they happen to have children. Saying people don't worry about distant cousins, so siblings are fine, is completely missing the point. No laws or bioethics boards are worried about fourth cousins marrying. The concern is about first-degree relatives, half-siblings, and first cousins. And that's exactly what unregulated sperm donation risks creating. The reality is, incest has been widely studied both historically and scientifically. Yes, today it's a cultural taboo in most countries, but there's clear biological, psychological, and social evidence that it's just not a good idea. There's something called inbreeding depression, which describes the reduced biological fitness that happens when closely related people reproduce. It's a drop in health and survival due to reduced genetic diversity. Basically, all humans carry some recessive genes that can lead to disease or defects, but it's not usually a problem unless both parents pass on the same gene. Siblings are far more likely to share the same recessive genes, and if you have a kid with your half-sibling, that child could inherit 2 copies of one of these genes and end up with genetic disorders like Tay-Sachs, cystic fibrosis, and hemophilia, or health problems like lower cognitive ability, decreased IQ, heart problems, cleft palate, and fertility issues. Charles II of Spain was born as a result of 16 generations of inbreeding. He couldn't walk until age 6, and by age 10, couldn't read or write and struggled to speak. He was sterile, mentally and physically impaired, and died childless at age 39, thus ending the Habsburg royal line. In evolution, diversity equals resilience. Marrying your cousin might make sense for your monarchy, but it doesn't create strong, adaptable, and fertile populations. The fact that incest is wildly feared and considered taboo is completely justified by what we know about it. Any sperm donor who dismisses these concerns or chooses to remain ignorant is, in my opinion, dangerous.
If you've got that many offspring, say 800 offspring, then there's a chance that, that incest in the future.
I think realistically, internet nowadays and everything like that, if you know your parents use the sperm donor, send your DNA off straight up. Like, go out on the family tree. I mean, we're always there, they can find us easily.
Now, we've spent some time talking about male breeders and the legality of it all, but I just want to finish by highlighting some of the experiences of some of the children who were born from sperm donation, because they didn't ask to be born this way, but this is their life. They can have similar experiences to kids who are adopted, where they struggle with their identity, feel abandoned, worry about genetic health issues, and just have questions.
Joanna and Mfanwe are the first generation of children born of donor insemination and the very first offspring to speak out against it. They want it banned.
You had lab coats and syringes. You are the genetic combination of people who wouldn't touch each other with a barge pole. Didn't even want to look at each other. That gets to you.
Talking to these adults, they say they feel incomplete. Some of them say they look in the mirror and they don't know who they are.
I'm so sorry to hear that, but I'm not sure that whole donor insemination program, with the vast good that it has done for so many people, should be dismantled because of the sad things which have happened to these children.
These are basic things that matter to people. Your medical history, your ethnicity, who your parents, your direct genetic parents are, your siblings. These are things that ground people. It gives them a sense of identity and belonging and who they are. I have that need just as much as everybody else.
I mentioned earlier about Dr. Cline, the fertility doctor who was featured in the documentary Our Father.
Every time that a new sibling pops up,
I know that I'm going to call them, and I know that I'm going to ruin their life. When it all hit me, I kind of just sat and stared for the rest of the day. And then for the next couple of weeks had a complete identity crisis, and I couldn't look in the mirror. I didn't want to think about where I got my hair from or where I got my eyes from, because I had always thought those were from my dad. My parents trusted their doctor, who said that it would be better for me to not know and that I would never find out. I mean, it's just common for me to pass people on the street, at work, wherever I may be, and I mean, I'll look at them and think, oh, the way you stand, the way you look, you could be related to me. A lot of the modern private super sperm donors, the ones that we've been talking about in this video, have only really come about in the last decade or so. We don't actually know what the impact of their choice to have hundreds of children will be. They don't know how these kids will be affected or what they'll need from them in the future. I'd argue that any man who claims that having hundreds of children is purely a good thing is drastically under-examining his own actions and the potential consequences.
I know you're in contact with a lot of the kids. Have you thought through kind of how you'll approach and what you tell kids as they get older, especially like, hey, you're my genetic father, but you weren't in my life? How do you talk about that?
Well, I think that I think it's gonna be very casual. Like, hey, I'm probably gonna be funny about it. Honestly, I'm probably gonna be funny about it and be like, hey, kid, I made you. I'm your daddy or something. I'm gonna kind of joke about it. You know what I mean? I think I look at it this way. It's better to joke around it instead of being serious. To me, like, that's how I look at it. Like, if you go out and you're funny and you kind of joke about it, I think they're gonna take it a lot better than you say, well, I didn't, obviously I did it and I just, whatever. So I'm probably gonna, be funny about it, and so we get along and everything.
But if a donor-conceived person says, if you'd really cared about me, the result of your actions, you would know I don't need 100 siblings.
No man in the world has any control over what the mother of a child is going to do.
You're helping them. You're helping these women. You know that you're helping to create
because every person is always happier existing than non-existing.
There's this underlying sense that they don't understand or maybe value the role of the father. The children that these men have fulfill some greater personal goal of having a genetic legacy or proving their own dominance, but there's a distinct lack of acknowledgement that these are real children that are being created, that the role of the father isn't just a sperm donor, but it's as a caretaker, a consistent, reliable presence in their child's life, a responsibility that none of these men seem to value above their own personal pursuits of fame, money, and accomplishment. If you're having children without taking on the responsibilities that go with being a parent, can you really call yourself a father?
No, but he gave up his rights and responsibilities in relationships. He created a child he would have no acknowledgement of.
He helped create.
No responsibility for. Look, I wasn't raised by my genetic father. That's a sense of abandonment. I'm sorry to say it is.
He's not my father. I may share half of his DNA, but he's not my father, and he never will be.
To sum it up, the fertility industry is far from perfect, but people still want to have children, and whenever modern medicine lets us down, you can bet there's a guy on Facebook ready to fill the void. Progress in terms of regulation and laws is always going to be slow, and unfortunately we have to learn from our mistakes. When it comes to having children, both women and men want to feel like they have some autonomy over the process. I get why people feel more comfortable meeting someone in person and relying on their own biological instincts, but the unregulated path comes with some huge risks, and some of these men clearly have issues. At the end of the day, you're responsible for whatever happens to that child, and you'll be forever tethered to whoever supplies the other half of the DNA used to make them. If I was thinking about using a private sperm donor, at the very least, I'd want evidence of recent sexual health screenings, medical and genetic testing. I'd want to spend some time with this person where I can get a proper feel for who they are. I'd want to ask about their motivations and be convinced that they truly understand the ethics of what they're doing. And I'd absolutely get a lawyer to write up a contract and make sure that we're all educated on the laws and regulations where we live.
the best that they can, do a background check on every donor. Simple background check costs $8. If the donor has some history, criminal background, then that's a red flag. One, that's something that the mothers would want to know. And two, it's a red flag, can be for mental illness. And then check their educational history. One of the big selling points for sperm, a product, is that the donor is highly educated and has a high IQ. If that's not true, then that's something that's very easy for the sperm banks to find out.
But that's just what I think. What do you think motivates these super sperm donors? Are you yourself a donor who's thought deeply about what you do? Are you a donor kid? Are you looking for a donor? I want to chat in the comments. As always, a huge, huge thank you to my wee band of paid Patreons who make videos like this possible. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more from me, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.